What does Creative Cloud have to say about video? Well, fortunately for us, I'm delighted to welcome onto the stage Niels Stevens.
Great to see so many of you out there. So, I've been tasked by the agency with building the flat video content for the responsive website. Okay. So let's dive into my Creative Cloud files and take a look in here. So this is the wireframe of the website that I'm going to fill with some video. There we go. So where these little film camera icon spots are just there, I'm going to drop in some flat video stuff. So I'm going to use a variety of tools to achieve that. First of which is Prelude. So as we kind of talked about, video is more and more a relevant type of content now. And whether or not you've ever done anything with it, everybody's shot video, even if it's just to stitch up your mates and put it on Facebook. But whether or not you've actually taken that video any further and worked with it after that is another matter. But basically, we provide the tools now to be able to do that very, very straightforwardly. So we built Prelude for our broadcast customers. And it basically understands any type of video format. So it doesn't matter whether you've shot on a phone or a RED camera or Epic or even your P2 cameras like ones we're using here from Panasonic. Any kind of native media format it will understand when you attempt to play it back. So I've got a bit of a mixture in here. My brief is fairly wide and open for what I'm going to fill this wireframe with. It just has to be some kind of extreme activity sports kind of video. So I've got a bunch of skateboarding footage in here. So straight away I can begin to identify what I'm looking at. I've got this hover scrub function, you see. So this means I can have hundreds and hundreds of clips in here and I can quickly determine which ones are naff and which ones are decent. And what I can also do is partially ingest pieces of that video so you don't spend hours copying the stuff that you're not going to use. It's dead important. And so, particularly if people are shooting, nature documentaries and they've got 17 hours of a gorilla chewing bamboo or something like that, you might really want to whittle through it and just kind of triage what you're working with before you get it across to Premiere. So that's what this application Prelude is for. And as I say, built for the broadcast community, but really relevant to anyone who just wants to work through their video files and just see what they've got and decide what they want to use. So I can transfer the clips to destination on the way in. There's also a really useful rename function in here. So many of you, if you've been out with 2 DSLRs and got back and copied the media over, you suddenly notice you've got 2 copies of every file, all called MVI_0001, and you can't tell what's what anymore because it's completely cryptic naming scheme. So the rename function is very useful for putting a prefix on the beginning with the name of the camera angle or some useful piece of information that helps you identify that stuff. We can embed metadata on the way in as well. But in this case, because this media is already on my drive, I'm not going to copy it across. I'm just going to do an import. Now, if I open up Premiere, I'm going to be able to take either a pre-select a bunch of clips or a cut or whatever I want and actually send it straight across to Premiere. So what I'll do is some logging inside Prelude. If I just select some of these clips, essentially I'm not copying them now, but I'm making a basic sort of shopping trolley of clips that I might want to use. And it's going to bring them into the logging mode for me. So if I go ahead and hit ingest, I want to continue. There we are, there's my clips ready to go. So I've got a nice big playback window and the ability to have very tactile transport control functions. So stop, play, scrub, shuttle, nice big audio waveform if the clip's got any audio. And here I can use the keyboard to do logging. So if I just want to mark a subclip, call it subclip 1, something catchy like that. Mark another one up here. And I can then go and log another clip. Yes, save the changes. And when I save that metadata, it's actually embedded into the clip. So even if you take this media elsewhere outside of the Adobe family of applications, all the media metadata that was put in there is conserved. It's all kept sacred in a way that will be utilized throughout any kind of workflow. So if you took this off to another editor, you'd still be able to see that functionality. So I'm going to create a basic rough cut. As I say, this is just an assembly tool. It's for you to whittle down, pare down the footage you're going to use, add in some clips, and then get ready to just send that across to the editor. So it doesn't allow me to put any transitions or any kind of wacky effects in. We'll get to that later. You can just reorder the clips, essentially top and tail them, and just get the thing roughly how it needs to look before you send it across to the edit suite. And indeed, this application will run on any computer that you can load video files onto. You can browse through, you can top and tail them, you can make a running order and a basic assembly. You don't need to tie up an expensive editing suite. You can then collaborate and send through the cloud your list and to actually open that up in Premiere and, on another system. So if I go ahead and select this cut here and send to Premiere Pro, that will appear in the bottom of my project down here, untitled Rough Cut. And there it is, with 2 edits. So here's one I made earlier in the true spirit of non-linear offline editing. You don't want to watch somebody doing hours and hours of that. So I've selected some basic shots that work quite well together here. So here's my skateboard guy. This is Danny Way from a movie called Waiting for Lightning. He actually does an ollie over the Great Wall of China, which is kind of cool. I won't tell you whether he makes it or not. You have to go see the movie. Oh, anyway, so I'm going to put some music behind that. And this is actually royalty-free library music composed by our very own Jason Levine when he was 12 years old, when he was still at Cool Edit. It's actually available inside Audition, so we're not going to get to Audition today. As I say, this is the super distilled creative day, but suffice it to say, it's got a bunch of royalty-free sound effects, loops, and music stuff in it. So if I go to Download Sound Effects and More, you sign into your adobe.com account, and that's just another part of the things that you can use royalty-free inside the cloud account. So as I say, a bunch of sound effects, some basic music beds, loops, and just things you can use. Because typically, again, if you have got around to uploading those videos of your friends to Facebook, you'll notice if you put it on any kind of copyright music background to it, they get taken down, certainly from YouTube, pretty fast. So that's a very useful way of making sure you're copyright compliant. So I've got some music under there. Let's just see how that sounds. So you'll notice my music runs out. It was just a 30-second mix. It runs out before the end of the pictures that I've selected together. So I've done some further work on this, and I've put lots of super cheesy transitions in. This is a rad skateboard video, after all. This is no prizes for artistic integrity. I've also made an edit to the video, to the audio underneath, just to loop that and make it longer so it fits the end. So we're seeing the first feature here that we've added in CC that these are really transactional kind of features, but they make the life of a video editor so much easier. The visual feedback, the tracks are bigger. We talked about track customization earlier with Jason. You've got much more visible transitions now that you can actually see and get your mouse cursor on to trim. This indicator down here is telling me I have duplicate frames. In this case, that's referring to the music, which I intentionally duplicated. But again, with your 17 hours of guerrilla footage, if you ate the same leaf twice, this will tell you without you having to worry about it on your own. We've got some visual feedback in here that also tells me that these are through edits. So this one cut B-roll I've put up here is actually one clip, but I've just cut it into several pieces for ease of putting different effects on each. So we'll take a look at some of the stuff that I've done to this. So I've used some plugins as well from Film Impact and also from Red Giant just to give me some kind of extra cheesy stuff, but there's a lot of cool stuff in the tin. So that's kind of okay, but before I get ready to actually deliver this to my magazine people, I'm just going to make some tweaks up here. So, for instance, this B-roll here, I reckon the edges need softening on that rotating picture just a little bit, just to tidy that up. So if we go into the effects panel here and look for edge feather, I can drag that on there. But that's just going to feather the edge on that first clip. I've still got these other through edit clips here that need to match the same. So The ideal thing here would be to select the setting of the parameter and then paste it onto the others. But what that would do before is actually paste the attributes of every type of motion or scaling effect on there. But now you get to selectively decide that you just want to paste a certain kind of attribute. So that's, again, new in CC. Just makes life a bit easier. So I can paste that across, and then we'll the edges on all of those. There we go. That's looking a bit tidier. So again, as well, in the visual feedback, another thing that we've added are these little effects indicators here. Video editors of you out there, I'm sure you will have until now accidentally adjusted the opacity to 95%, not realized you've done it because you were clicking the wrong button. It will glow at you with a big yellow icon now telling you you've changed the intrinsic effects and you've actually dropped that. So there's a great color code. Gives you more and more this visual feedback to help you with what you're doing, to save you a second 100 times a day and just make life easier. So you can see I've got a few effects on there as well. I've actually automated the opacity, so that's what that green icon is telling me. You have keyframes on your intrinsic opacity layer. This next effect up here, I've got a transition called Chroma Leak, I believe it's called, Impact Chroma Leaks from Magic Bullet. But this next effect is actually an After Effects process. So this is actually something quite sophisticated that we don't have access to inside Premiere Pro. So if I just fire up After Effects CC, open up my existing project here. Just let that fire up. And what I can actually do, this is nested inside After Effects as what we call a dynamic link. So if I go Edit Original, these two compositions are tied together completely in RAM. So there's no export, there's no save as, there's no rendering. The two timelines are actually sharing the same piece of memory. So once something's actually buffered inside After Effects and is available to play back, it just shines straight through into the Premiere timeline. So any other workflow you may have used between an NLE and an FX package out there it will have entailed some kind of MXF or AAF export or an EDL or something that just slows life down. Our applications all talk to each other and work completely hand in hand. The next piece actually brings together three applications. So you saw Jason earlier on talking about our new C4D collaboration, but that's so huge, I'm going to talk about it again. The fact that you get C4D Lite with your CCM subscription is just a huge deal. Never mind the fact that we've got this flawless integration between the two of them. The fact that it's just a value add in the tin is just exciting for all of us. So what you've got here, essentially, is some video with some motion graphics from After Effects superimposed over the top of it, and a visual 3D object superimposed from C4D as well. So if I go over to After Effects, this just may take a second to buffer. Even this absolute monolith of a laptop still takes a few seconds to draw the strands of all this stuff together. Some quite heavy lifting that goes on. But what I'm going to be able to do is actually find the C4D layer inside. So there it is. That's my C4D layer nested inside my After Effects comp. Here it is in isolation. If I just click this layer here, go CG Skateboarder, press Control-E, and there we have C4D Lite launching up as part of my standard install. I'll just dismiss that. So we get it to load, and now I have full control over this object in 3D space. Let me just shrink that down a bit. So I'm able to rotate it, I can change any of the parameters, I can do whatever I like. So I won't bore you with how I built this entire skateboard from scratch 5 minutes ago, but I'll actually just, as Jason says, it's all about the downloads, you know, so this one my son particularly likes. Huge Lego guy. Come on, behave yourself, there we are. But unfortunately, he's not really going to fit in our scene. But there's a ton of cool stuff you can download out there. But anyway, let's get rid of him. What I'm going to do is just actually change some of the design on the base of this skateboard here. So if I select that part of the object, if I go to the layer texture here, let's just intensify that a bit, brighten it up, and pull the green channel down. Have it looking a bit more purple and rad and skateboardy. Save it out and go back to After Effects. As you can see, that just ripples straight through into that composition and updates like that. So all the applications completely tied together, Premiere, After Effects, and C4D in one completely dynamic workflow. So I'm getting about ready to publish this out. But of course, this is all standard 16:9 video footage, the way most things are shot. This is mostly 1920x1080. It's a completely mixed timeline, though. As we established, Prelude can read red footage at the same time, phone footage. It doesn't matter. It can blend all these media types together in the same timeline in real time. No transcoding. We're just the Mercury playback engine, which we've had since CS5, actually allows you to have that level of high-quality playback all simultaneously. The difficulty here is that that video overlay that we looked at originally in the Photoshop document here is actually a 1600x800 sized overlay. So I need to reformat this video. But that's dead straightforward because I can just nest the sequence within. So if I go ahead and grab my skate video sequence, let's see. Drag that across. I've got two choices. This new mode allows me to actually nest sequences and actually see the individual clips. That's great for reversioning stuff. You can drag whole sequences across and see all the clips. In this case, I actually just want it to appear as one object, so a sequence within a sequence. But it's going to tell me, oh, you've made a new pixel resolution here. That's fine. I'll keep those existing settings. That's it. I've rematted my sequence to 1600x800 ready for export. Haven't transcoded a thing, haven't written a piece of data. All I'm actually going to do is go to the motion effects here and just scale that back so that it just crops on the edge. And there we are, that's now ready for export. One final thing, Richard said he's actually been with the client and he's made an overall look for this. So Jason again talked about how we've got the Lumetri engine for speed grade inside the application here. So indeed, we've got the ability to put in adjustment layers and throw any of those kind of Lumetri looks straight on there. I'm going to dig into SpeedGrade itself and take a look because we've actually tidied up the interface a little bit this time around. If I go into here. So SpeedGrade was an application acquisition with Iridas about 1.5 years ago now, and this was a $40,000 grading solution. So their existing user base was sat at marble tables with silk gloves and had the world's biggest monitors, probably about that size, on their desktop. Now we suddenly have all these new users, and the biggest request was the tools are amazing, but I can't fit it on my screen. I don't have a 2560 by 1600 laptop. I just need to be able to get access to the tools. So we've kind of refined a lot of that this time around, and we've made a lot of the interface hideable, and so you can actually get down to see what you're trying to do. So for instance, I've got all of my different tools in here for being able to do what we call a technical grade. So that's where you would use the scopes to make sure everything's brought into spec. And then we've got the sort of artistic grade side of things as well. So I can add various different stylistic looks like the crayon drawing. Everyone remembers the Aha video from the 80s. They used SpeedGrade, in fact, for that 25 years ago. It was awesome. But we can add secondaries, we can add primaries, we can add mattes, masks, all the usual stuff you would expect from a grading application. But the killer feature in this new version that Richard alluded to is the shot matching. So Richard's not a SpeedGrade user, but he's got a good utility with curves and with level changing inside Photoshop. He has sent me this as a snapshot of this particular shot. It was just a freeze frame I sent out to him. But he's worked with the client to actually work out a look that works well. And if I can just find that area of the timeline, here we are. This is the same shot. But I want to take the look that he's created in Photoshop and I want to superimpose it in SpeedGrade. So let's just see, match it up about here. There we are, just before the skateboard. Yeah, that's approximately the same frame, just before that wipe. There we go. I want the look of my footage inside SpeedGrade to match the look he's created on the Photoshop document. So I can go in, I can play with the curves, I can get the histogram looking right, or I can just hit the shot match button. That would make it a lot easier. And that just analyzes the histogram of the still image and just makes the two shots match up with each other. Huge feature. So I can then get ready to send that out in Premiere. So I'm about ready to start exporting my footage now. So having matted and reset this footage and reformatted it to 1600x800, I'm more or less ready to go. So I'm going to find that sequence in here. Let's see, it's called the 1600x800 responsive sequence. Catchy title. It is, there we go, there's my sequence. I simply go to File, Export, and then I can pick any flavor of video to send that out. In this case, because it already has the right dimensions, I'm just going to go match source and it will make the output there. If I go ahead and export now, it's going to use all my processor cores, it's going to use 64-bit acceleration, it's going to use CUDA graphics acceleration, every resource the computer has to make that file as quickly as possible. But in so doing, it's going to lock me out of the editing interface. So that's why we have a background encoding option where I just go ahead and hit Q. That's going to send this job out to the media encoder. And this is a great Swiss Army knife for just converting video formats to other formats. So this custom format that we've created for our website is here. But they've told me also at the 11th hour, can you make an iPhone version as well? Oh, and by the way, can we have an Android version? Oh, and also I want to send it to YouTube. Oh, and yeah, it's going to go to Air as well. Did I mention that? So can you make me an OP1A MXF DNX version? Yes, that's all fine. I just literally add them to the queue. I've got 3 flavors there now ready to go. Let's have other web video. I mentioned YouTube. Drag that on as a preset output. And add one more to the bottom. And all we do when I'm ready to create this export, I'm going to check the output path as being the Creative Cloud files space. So this is published directly back to the collaborative area I've been working in with my colleagues at the agency. And I just go ahead and I hit encode. And it's going to make all 4 versions in tandem, just multi-processing style cooperatively. And that's now pretty much ready to be published. And so I'm going to send that across to the responsive web team. And that's me just about done. Thank you.